I might have mentioned this before, but you know, one thing you shouldn't do after watching a very intense car chase crime movie, drive a car probably. I enjoyed Baby Driver immensely. I was very curious about this film and was looking forward to it ever since I'd seen the trailer for it and found out, you know, of course, Edgar Wright helming this production. So I'm a big Edgar Wright fan. I was genuinely kind of disheartened when he had left Ant-Man. I love the Cornetto trilogy. I've got all three of them there. A lot of people were kind of iffy on World's End. I adore World's End, but Hot Fuzz has always been my jam, even though I know that movie backwards and forwards and can probably recite a couple of lines from it. I can still pop that in and be just thoroughly engaged. That's not a white noise movie for me. That's a full-on experience I still laugh at. But Baby Driver, this has got to be some of his best work yet. It's so stylistically him, but so well constructed and not probably as chaotic as the Cornetto stuff typically is. But I love that chaos, don't get me wrong, but this feels, even though it's about like intense car chases and robberies and criminals turning on each other and brutally, you know, savagely beating the hell out of each other at times, it's well paced. It's got a nice rhythm going for it. Puts his head and shoulders above other movies of this fair, which might still be enjoyable, a la Fast and the Furious, but what really kind of elevates it beyond that is a couple of things. First of all, the acting in this is very solid, and you've seen these characters before, like I said, in other movies like Fast and Furious franchise. You've seen these archetypes before. You've seen these pretty stereotypical criminals. You have the mastermind in Kevin Spacey's character. You have the loose cannon in the form of both Jamie Foxx and Jon Bernthal. And you have something of the rogue with a heart of gold, kinda sorta, in John Hamm. And then, of course, you've got this guy, I forget his last name, but Ansel, who's been in, I guess, Fault in Our Stars, I think was one of the movies he's been in. And he's the one from the Divergent movies that surprisingly should be coming to a TV screen near you to sputter out and die. He does a great job as kind of, again, it's in his name, this baby-faced, kind of innocent-looking kid who's in over his head with these criminals. I like how Edgar Wright takes you through kind of the background and the story of how he got to be in this particular predicament without going full on into, you know, well, let's just take a huge chunk of the movie and plant it in there as to being the exposition dump for why Baby is doing what he's doing. It's laced throughout the entire movie. It's laced throughout conversations he has here and there with either the criminals themselves or with his love interest in this film, played by Lily James. It's in his interactions with his makeshift, or his foster dad essentially, who he communicates to through sign language, and those are some of my favorite scenes. This movie really makes you care about this kid's situation outside of criminality, so that when he does get dragged into like heists and having to be the driver for all these bank robberies, you do feel bad whenever Kevin Spacey pops up or whenever you hear his burner cell phone go off, because you're like, oh man, he is enjoying his life, he's enjoying falling in love, and now you gotta drag him back into this crap. And this crap gets intense. These chases are some of the most well-orchestrated car chases I've seen in a long while. You gotta see these on the big screen to kind of really get that point across. Practically almost no CGI. I'm sure there is CGI here and there, definitely with the last, let's say, car crash in this film. I feel there was a little bit of some CGI enhancement, as there probably has to be, but for the most part, like, actual stunt drivers, actual, like, well choreographed car chases and cars flipping, stunt cars, your death-proof cars essentially doing wild flips in the air or colliding with, you know, each other, almost going underneath a semi. Really well done action sequences throughout this film. And Edgar Wright, I feel that's always been one of his long-lasting staples in his directorial style, is being able to have really kinetic, really fast-paced action, but you're not losing sight of stuff. At no point did I feel confused or kind of like, okay, disoriented as to where we were in terms of, okay, baby's over here, and you know the cops are chasing him through this way, and here's John Hamm and his partner slash wife, I guess, you know, on the run over here. You always kind of knew where you were with regards to the pacing and the timing of the action, and it doesn't, to put it in layman's terms, it doesn't feel like a Michael Bay movie where the action is just sporadic all over the place. It's beautiful to look at times, Michael Bay, don't get me wrong, but it can be very confounding and confusing, especially when you have a bunch of robots that look alike. Moving on. So the performances across the board, really well done. Like I said, I haven't really seen much of this Ansel Elgort actor before. He does a good job in this movie. Like, he's a very likable, very charming presence. I love his interactions with Lily James in this. She's really kind of adorable, and they're adorable together. And you really want them to be all right. And the movie plays with certain things throughout where you feel like, oh God, is something terrible going to happen? Because I know Edgar Wright can be a fan of going really dark, really quick, out of nowhere. So you were on the edge of your seat at times, like wondering, like, oh God, I hope they make it out okay. And then it does kind of rip your heart out a little bit at the end, kinda, but it's very endearing. It's because you invest in these characters. Now, again, they're not the most in-depth characters, perhaps. They do explain at times, like, their backstory, but they do it well. And like I said, I love the interactions he just has in his everyday life with her, with his foster dad. Even the interactions he has subtly here and there with assholes like Jamie Foxx and John Hamm and John Bernthal in this movie. The movie actually plays with your expectations about where the supporting characters' arcs are going to go too, because John Hamm, when you first are introduced to him in this film, seems like the most level-headed out of this entire crew of criminals. He's the one who kind of warms to Baby more so than the others. John Bernthal which, by the way, John Bernthal's not in this a lot, so enjoy the time you have with him. He just vanishes from the movie after about 20 minutes, I want to say, 15 minutes. But he and Jamie Foxx take kind of their turns at giving Baby shit. On the verge of just like, why are these guys just gonna shoot him out of spite for no reason? Like, they're that unhinged, and it's glorious. But John Hamm actually seems to like Baby quite a bit, takes kind of a shine to him, shares interests in music with him, which we'll get to the music in this movie. But his character arc, before things start wrapping up a little, his character arc takes a turn. I was like, wow, he's getting intense. Like, unbelievable. Like, he becomes a T-1000 at a certain point in this movie where he's just everywhere. Like, this relentless, unstoppable killing machine. I wasn't expecting John Hamm to go that intense, but he did it. He did it, man, and makes me like him even more. Jamie Foxx, I love him just playing. He's just straight up loco throughout this entire film. When he gets into it with Baby especially, like, he's more violent, more ruthless. In one of the robberies he kills a guard, and Baby's really shaken by this because they have never like resorted to killing people before. And then all of a sudden here comes Jamie Foxx's Bats character, starts doing this shit, and he gives him a very intense like piece of advice. It's like, you check your feelings or you get bullets in return, and just straight up pulls a shotgun up to his face. It's way better than what he's doing in Sleepless. I'll give Jamie Foxx that. Like, I buy his intensity in this movie more so than anything he was doing in Sleepless. Yeah, Jamie Foxx is kind of a delight in here, and he has funny moments. Everyone has some really funny moments. Despite that they are these hardened thugs, everyone gets a laugh here or there. John Hamm gets a couple of laughs. Jamie does. John Bernthal, in his short time on screen, gets a couple of laughs. Baby definitely gets a lot of light moments too. Kevin Spacey has a really hilarious line where he's about had it with Baby's crap, and Baby always reminds him, is like, yeah, we're a team. Teamwork means more to me than our friendship, as it were. And he's quoting Monsters, Inc. And Kevin Spacey just has had it with that quote. He's just like, enough. I know you're quoting me Monsters, Inc. Enough with that bullshit. So Kevin Spacey's character, Doc, I think is, like I said, he's the mastermind. He's the one kind of organizing the stuff, and he's the one who fences the money to people. His character arc took a turn I really wasn't anticipating. I was expecting him to kind of maintain this very cold and dispassionate demeanor, even though he approaches Baby like he's a friend. You know deep down, like, he's being manipulative and being very methodical with his word choices and trying to come off as a very pleasant guy, like very Frank Underwood-ish almost. But you know there's malicious intent underneath every word he's saying. He goes to a territory I wasn't expecting him to, and he almost starts to get into it a little bit, like his backstory and his reasoning why he's suddenly doing something. But it is quickly done aside, and I feel that's Edgar Wright being like, we'll give you a little tease of why he's doing what he's doing right now, but that's not the thrust of the story. Let's get back to him just blowing people to death with a shotgun. It's a ride, to be sure. Edgar Wright doesn't let up. Even in lighter stuff, you feel that kinetic energy, like I mentioned before, play out in the more mundane things where you have Baby hanging around his apartment with his foster dad and singing music or watching TV with him. Like, even that stuff is framed and edited in a way that promotes a lot of momentum throughout the story, so that even when you have slower scenes of him just talking or relaxing with either his dad or with Lily James's character, there's still something exciting going on, at least, or still something grabbing your attention. The other major component in this production, the soundtrack. Jeez Louise, this was an awesome soundtrack. It does not let up. It continues throughout this entire movie. Like, every scene has some big either classic or good old-fashioned rock or pop hit in its background, and it opens with a little John Spencer and Blues Explosion, a little Bell Bottoms. That's the opening track for this movie, and they do a great job of framing it to serve the story through the character himself. Like, his backstory is rooted in music. And I'm not gonna give away anything with regards to that, because it is a very kind of heartwarming side to the story, and I feel you need to kind of watch it for yourself to really get that full arc. Music is very important to this character, a fellow tinnitus bearer. Between me, Baby, and Sterling Archer, we're the tinnitus triumvirate. But he always has earbuds on, he's always got his iPod, and always has to have a specific track lined up for a certain action, whether that's him getting coffee for the crew, or whether that's waiting it out while they go in and rob a place, whether it's having the right track for getaways. It is really well placed and really well framed in the story. Like, not even just from his perspective, because a lot of the music is from Baby's perspective, but when it gets a little bit wider, like say in police shootouts or chase scenes, the music is timed so well with sound and dialogue and action. It really kind of blew my hair back a little bit about just how awesome the sound and the music integrates into what's taking place on the screen. And yeah, of course, that's a purposeful choice. And you would think that would be something that would get a little cheesy or a little annoying. It never got old for me. When they're kind of cornered by the cops at one point, and John Hamm and his lady friend are just unloading machine gun fire on these cops. All the machine gun shots are in perfect synchronization with drum hits, with guitar riffs. It helps mirror the intensity of that action sequence all the more. When he's on the run, on foot from the cops, and he, you know, at a certain point, he's hiding out in a park, and there's this just slow simmer in a certain tune, and he's just waiting it out, but then as the intensity picks up again, here it goes into the big rockin' riff, and he's on the run again. Brighton Rock plays a big, kind of a big narrative thrust in the last portion of the movie. Like, as soon as you hear Brighton Rock blasting on someone's radio, you're like, oh shit, it's gonna get real now. So Queen plays a pretty big role in this film. The kid himself, Baby, makes his own mixes, and honestly, I like some of these remixes. I want to know if there's, on the actual soundtrack, those original remixes, because what he does is he has like a little tape recorder in his pocket at all times, and he's not like snitching on them, or he's not recording to incriminate. He's just interested in things people say, and so he'll record like Kevin Spacey and John Bernthal having a conversation about if he's not retarded, and Kevin Spacey was saying, by retarded you mean slow? He's not slow. And so he'll record that little segment, and he'll like go back to his apartment and he'll remix it, and he'll throw on some bass beats, and he'll throw on like record scratches and things like that, and it'll become this awesome remix of Kevin Spacey saying, is he retarded? You mean slow? He's not slow. And that becomes like its own beat and rhythm. I want that mix. It's pretty fun. I mean, I was getting a lot of comparisons to Drive when I was watching this, but for different reasons. I enjoyed Drive. It was my favorite film of that year, I think 2011. I could see people drawing up some comparisons to it, but it's a completely different animal, I feel. Drive, while it did have some pretty cool action sequences and car chases, it wasn't necessarily propelled by a lot of that. It was more about mood and atmosphere, and creating sort of this environment, this surreal sort of environment amidst this crime drama. Yeah, that served it well. Like it was, again, Ryan Gosling's performance is very minimal, but it's a minimal that is appealing. It's not like he's not doing anything or that he's completely wooden. Like when he gets intense, he gets fucking intense. That's kind of sort of mirrored here. Baby is a far more like engaged character. He's a kid of few words, certainly, but he's got a little bit more going on with regards to, you know, being charming towards Lily James, or being like a nice foster son, and actually, you know, getting intense when he has to with the other criminals. If Drive is like that quiet, reserved, but very poetic person you like to hang around with from time to time because they'll say something really eloquent, Baby Driver is your fun-loving bar buddy who, even though there's bumps along the way and it gets downright tough and dirty at times, you're guaranteed to have a good time just partying. And this is what that feels like. Drive is for when you want to just kind of relax and just engage in mood and atmosphere. Baby Driver is an all-out like party that is fun and doesn't wear out its welcome. Yeah, the time really flew by in this film, even when like it gets a little bit slower or quieter. It's just because, again, in those slower and quieter moments, it can get very, very intense. And these people are so good at switching that on without it seeming like out of nowhere. Baby Driver, it doesn't knock Logan out of the top, but it might come in right behind Logan as one of my favorite films of the year. I want to see it again. I want to see it again in theater. I recommend this movie without a doubt. If you enjoy Edgar Wright, his original properties, the stuff he writes and directs, if you enjoyed Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End, this is right up that alley. And it feels like a good spiritual successor to that stuff. It's not as funny, perhaps, as those movies were, but there are moments of light humor here and there, and there's certainly odd moments. The scene where he has to scope out a post office, I'm not going to say any more about it, but that scene comes to mind as being just odd, but kind of hilarious at the same time. Definitely check out Baby Driver. Check it out on a big screen. It's not to be missed.